First contact with the outcasts. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the UES Pathfinder, her eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing a world that by all official records shouldn't exist. The planet Nevara hung before them like a fading jewel, its atmosphere tinged with an unusual purple hue that spoke of artificial manipulation. But what caught her attention weren't the strange atmospheric readings. It was the thousands of ships in orbit, all of them dead or dying. "Life signs?" she asked, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her gut. Lieutenant Rodriguez, her senior sensor officer, shook his head. "Scattered. Maybe 10,000 survivors across the entire planet. But Commander, these readings don't make sense. The technology level here is far beyond anything we've seen, yet they're suffering from basic resource shortages." The Pathfinder had stumbled upon this world during a routine survey of supposedly empty space along the galaxy's outer rim. There was no record of this civilization in any of their databases, no mention of their clearly advanced technology, and absolutely no explanation for why a species capable of atmospheric manipulation would be dying out. "Open a channel," Chen ordered. "All frequencies, first contact protocols." For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, a voice emerged from their speakers, clear, cultured, and carrying a weight of exhaustion that made Chen's heart ache. "This is Archive Keeper Ven of the Neverend people. We had not expected anyone to find us. The Confederation made sure of that." Chen leaned forward. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Pathfinder. We're reading critical life support failures across your orbital platforms. We can offer immediate humanitarian assistance." There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "The last time we accepted help, Commander, our people were systematically erased from galactic memory. The Confederation deemed us too dangerous, not because we were violent, but because we refused to weaponize our technological advances. They could not control us, so they chose to destroy us through isolation." Chen's jaw tightened. She'd heard rumors about the Galactic Confederation's methods of maintaining control, but this was genocide through neglect. "Archive Keeper Ven, I represent Earth. We're not members of the Confederation, and we don't recognize their authority to condemn an entire species to death. Let us help." The silence that followed felt eternal. Finally, Ven spoke again, his voice trembling slightly. "Your offer is unexpected. But you should know that accepting it will make you enemies of the Confederation. They do not tolerate defiance." Chen looked around her bridge, meeting the eyes of each of her crew members. She saw no hesitation, only determination. Then perhaps it's time someone stood up to them. "Prepare to receive our shuttle. We're coming down." The next hours were a blur of activity as the Pathfinder's crew organized emergency relief efforts. The Neverends, they discovered, were a tall, elegant species with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. Their cities were marvels of architectural beauty, but many were falling into disrepair as their population dwindled and their resources ran dry. In their central archive, Ven showed Chen the true extent of their situation. The Neverends had once been pioneers in sustainable technology, particularly in the field of consciousness transfer and artificial intelligence integration. But they had refused to allow their discoveries to be weaponized, leading to increasing pressure from the Confederation. "They didn't just isolate us," Ven explained, his long fingers tracing patterns on an ancient console. "They systematically removed all reference to our existence from galactic databases. Trade routes were altered to bypass our sector. Our distress calls were blocked. We became ghosts in our own galaxy." Chen watched as holographic displays showed the steady decline of Neverend civilization, not through war or natural disaster, but through calculated neglect. "How many of you are left?" "Less than 10,000, from a population that once numbered billions." Ven's eyes dimmed. "We have managed to preserve our core population in stasis, but our power reserves are failing. Within a year, maybe less, we will be gone completely." Chen stood in silence for a long moment, her mind racing through the implications of what she was about to propose. Earth was still finding its footing in the galactic community, still building its forces and establishing its presence. What she was considering could change everything. But as she looked at the dying world around her, at the face of an entire civilization being slowly suffocated by the galaxy's indifference, she knew there was only one choice she could live with. "What if we offered you more than just emergency aid?" she said finally. "What if we offered you sanctuary?" Ven's eyes widened. "You would risk the Confederation's wrath." "Earth has a history of standing up to bullies," Chen replied with a grim smile. "And we have something the Confederation doesn't: the conviction that every species has the right to exist on their own terms, even if it means war. Especially then." Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. "Your people have suffered enough. Archive Keeper, let us help you build something new." As Ven reached out to take her hand, neither of them could know that this moment would spark a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy. But they both understood that something profound had changed. In the face of systematic extinction, humanity had chosen to stand with the outcasts. The real question was, were they ready for what would come next? The price of compassion. The news of Earth's decision to grant sanctuary to the Neverons spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. Within days, the Pathfinder's quantum communications array was flooded with messages from the Galactic Confederation. First diplomatic protests, then thinly veiled threats. Commander Chen sat in her ready room aboard the Pathfinder, reviewing the latest transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Hassan's holographic form hovered above her desk, his expression grave but determined. "The Security Council has approved your request, Commander," he said. "Operation Sanctuary is now active. We're dispatching the 7th Fleet to your position, along with colony ships and engineering corps." "But Sarah," he leaned forward, his holographic eyes meeting hers, "the Confederation isn't bluffing. Their ambassador just walked out of the Geneva talks. They never expected anyone to challenge them like this." Chen replied, her fingers drumming against her desk. "How long do we have?" 3 weeks, maybe 4 before their fleet can mobilize. We're already moving defensive platforms to protect Earth. The question is, can we evacuate enough Neverons before they arrive?" The question haunted Chen as she made her way to the planet's surface. The Neveron stasis facilities were vast, housing millions of their people in suspended animation. Moving them would require resources Earth barely had, and time they definitely didn't. In the Central Archive, she found Ven working with a team of human engineers. The Neverons had already begun sharing their technology, helping Earth scientists understand their stasis systems. What they discovered was revolutionary. The Neverons hadn't just preserved bodies, they had found a way to store consciousness itself. "Your arrival has given us hope," Ven said, approaching Chen. "But we cannot ask your people to die for us." "Nobody's dying," Chen responded firmly. "But we need solutions, Ven. Creative ones." A young human engineer, Dr. Maya Patel, looked up from her workstation. "Commander, I think we might have something. The Neveron consciousness storage technology. It's incredibly compact. We could transfer millions of minds into portable matrices, evacuate the essence of their civilization, even if we can't move everyone physically, and leave their bodies behind." Chen frowned. Temporarily, Ven interjected, his eyes brightening with understanding. "Our consciousness can be restored to new bodies once we reach safety. It's not ideal, but it's survival." Chen finished. "How quickly can we implement this?" The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. Earth's ships arrived in waves, bringing with them prefabricated shelters, medical supplies, and defensive installations. The Neverons worked tirelessly alongside human engineers, transferring their stored population into advanced quantum matrices that could house millions of minds in spaces no larger than a briefcase. But the Confederation wasn't idle. Their ships began appearing at the edge of the system, first as scouts, then in larger numbers. Each day brought them closer to a confrontation that neither side could avoid. Admiral Hassan arrived personally aboard the flagship UES Defiant, coordinating with Chen to establish a defensive perimeter around Navarra. The Neverend's advanced shield technology, combined with Earth's tactical systems, created a formidable defense network. But would it be enough? "We've evacuated 60% of the stored population," Chen reported during a staff meeting. "But we're running out of time. The Confederation fleet will be here in force within 48 hours, Hassan confirmed. "Their numbers are significant." "Then we need to change the game," Dr. Peidel interrupted. She had been working closely with the Neverends, and there was an excitement in her voice that made everyone take notice. "The Neverends have been helping us understand their consciousness transfer technology. What if we could use it not just for storage, but for direct neural integration with our ships?" The room fell silent. Hassan leaned forward. "Explain." "Their technology allows consciousness to interface directly with computer systems. Imagine our ships operated not by traditional crews, but by integrated human Neverend consciousness teams. The reaction times alone would be revolutionary," Ven finished. "But it would require volunteers willing to temporarily transfer their consciousness into your vessel's systems." "I volunteer," Chen said immediately, surprising no one who knew her. The next day, as the first Confederation warships appeared on long-range sensors, humanity and the Neverends began their greatest collaboration. Together, they would either change the face of space warfare forever, or go down in history as the alliance that dared to defy the galaxy's greatest power. The choice had been made. Now they would face the consequences together. Breaking point. The consciousness transfer was nothing like Commander Chen had expected. One moment she was lying in the medical bay, Ven's gentle hands positioning neural interfaces on her temples, and the next she was the ship. Every system, every sensor, every weapon became an extension of her own body. Beside her consciousness, she felt the presence of Ven's second-in-command, Lyra, their minds working in perfect synchronization. The UES Pathfinder was no longer just a vessel. It had become a hybrid entity, powered by the merged consciousness of human and Neverend minds. Across the defensive line, 11 other ships had undergone the same transformation, their crews volunteering for the experimental integration. Confederation fleet approaching weapons range. Admiral Hassan's voice came through what Chen now perceived as her own internal communications system. "All ships, battle stations." The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace in a dazzling display of power. Over 200 vessels, ranging from swift corvettes to massive dreadnoughts. Their formation was perfect, their technology superior to Earth's conventional ships in every way. But they had never faced anything like the hybrid vessels that waited for them. The Confederation's first transmission was predictably arrogant. "This is Admiral Tar of the Confederation Defense Force. Your protection of the Neverend remnant violates galactic law. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Hassan's response was brief. "We decline." The battle began with a massive barrage from the Confederation's forward elements. Under normal circumstances, the sheer volume of fire would have overwhelmed Earth's defenses, but the hybrid ships moved with impossible grace, their human Neverend crews reacting at the speed of thought itself. Chen/Pathfinder danced through the void, every maneuver calculated and executed in microseconds. Alongside her, Lyra's consciousness managed the ship's energy distribution with an efficiency that no conventional crew could match. Together, they turned the Pathfinder into something entirely new, a perfect fusion of human intuition and Neverend technological mastery. "Pattern Omega," Hassan ordered, and the hybrid fleet moved as one. The Confederation forces, expecting an easy victory, found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Ships that should have been easy prey became impossible targets, striking from impossible angles with perfect precision. But the Confederation hadn't become the galaxy's dominant power through weakness. As the initial shock wore off, they adapted their tactics, bringing their superior numbers to bear. The first hybrid ship fell when the UES Valiant sacrificed itself to protect a convoy of civilian vessels carrying never-end consciousness matrices. "They're targeting the evacuation ships," Chen reported, feeling the loss of the Valiant like a physical pain. The merged consciousness network meant that every defeat, every death, was felt by all. Hassan's voice was grim. "Hold the line. Earth's second fleet is inbound. We just need to survive for 3 more hours." The battle evolved into a desperate game of survival. The hybrid ships fought with everything they had, their crews pushing the consciousness integration technology to its limits. Chen found herself operating on pure instinct, the barrier between human and machine consciousness becoming increasingly blurred. Then something unexpected happened. As the Confederation fleet pressed their attack, other ships began appearing at the edge of the battlefield. Vessels of various designs and origins, many of them ancient and bearing signs of long isolation. "This is the Free Worlds Alliance," a new voice announced on all channels. "We too have suffered under Confederation tyranny. We stand with Earth and the Neverends." The arrival of these unexpected allies, other species and civilizations that had been marginalized or oppressed by the Confederation, shifted the battle's momentum. The Confederation fleet, suddenly facing opposition from multiple directions, was forced to fall back and regroup. As the fighting temporarily subsided, Chen felt Lyra's consciousness brush against her own. The Neverend's thoughts carried a mixture of hope and wonder. "Your people's defiance has awakened something," Lyra communicated. "Others are finding their courage." The battle had been won, but Chen knew this was only the beginning. The Confederation would return with an even larger force, but they would find their opponents change. Earth's protection of the Neverends had sparked something greater than a simple military conflict. It had become a symbol of resistance against oppression. In the brief respite that followed, as Earth's second fleet arrived and the hybrid ships underwent repairs, Chen received a private transmission from Admiral Hassan. "The Confederation Senate is in chaos," he reported. "Several member species are threatening to withdraw over this incident. They're calling for an emergency session." They never expected their perfect system to crack. Chen responded, still maintaining her consciousness link with the Pathfinder. "What happens next?" "We've received a request for diplomatic talks, not from the Confederation military, but from a coalition of their minor member species. They want to discuss alternatives." Chen shared the information through the consciousness network, feeling the ripple of cautious optimism spread through the hybrid fleet. Perhaps the greatest victory wasn't in the battle itself, but in showing the galaxy that resistance was possible. The price had been high. Too many good people had died defending their principles. But as Chen looked out at the assembled fleet of hybrid ships and their newfound allies, she knew that something profound had changed in the galaxy. The Confederation's monopoly on power had been challenged, and the future suddenly held new possibilities. The art of defiance. The diplomatic vessel arrived 3 days after the battle, its design unlike anything in the Confederation's known fleet. It was an ancient ship, its hull marked with the scripts of a dozen forgotten civilizations. The vessel belonged to the Archivists, a neutral faction so old that even the Confederation treated them with cautious respect. Commander Chen, still integrated with the Pathfinder systems, watched as the vessel approached. Behind her consciousness, she felt Lyra's curiosity mingling with her own. The Archivists were legendary for their role as galactic historians, maintaining records of every civilization, including those the Confederation had tried to erase. "They're requesting permission to dock," Admiral Hassan announced over the neural network. "Their lead diplomat is interesting." The Archivist delegation that emerged from the ship brought with them revelations that would shake the foundations of the Confederation's power. Their leader was a tall, crystalline being named Teshvera, whose very body seemed to sparkle with stored information. In the Pathfinder's conference room, now modified to accommodate both physical and neural presences, Teshvera revealed the truth. The Confederation's rise to power was built on systematic erasure. They explained, their voice resonating on multiple frequencies. The Neverans were not the first civilization they attempted to remove from history. We have preserved the records of 17 other species who faced similar fates. The holographic displays filled with images of lost civilizations, species that had developed technologies or philosophies that threatened the Confederation's control. Some had been destroyed outright, others isolated until they faded away. The Neverans had been merely the latest in a long pattern. But you've changed the equation, Teshfera continued, turning to face Chen's neural projection. Your defense of the Neverans, and especially your willingness to merge your consciousness with theirs, has created something unprecedented. The barrier of species isolation, which the Confederation used to maintain control, has been broken. The news from across the galaxy seemed to confirm this. More ships were arriving daily, vessels crewed by species that had been hiding in the shadows of space, waiting for a chance to reclaim their place in the galactic community. The consciousness integration technology, born from human Neveran cooperation, was proving to be more than a military advantage. It was becoming a bridge between species that had been forced apart. Dr. Patel, who had been monitoring the integration network's expansion, reported startling findings. Each new species that joins the network brings unique perspectives, new ways of thinking. We're not just sharing technology, we're sharing consciousness itself. The potential for advancement is infinite. But the Confederation was far from defeated. Their main fleet was regrouping, drawing forces from across their territory. Intelligence suggested they were preparing for a massive assault, one that would make their previous attack look like a mere skirmish. They'll try to end this quickly now, Hassan observed during a strategic session. The longer this continues, the more their control erodes. Then we need to move faster than they can, Chen replied. Through the neural network, she could feel the agreement of dozens of hybrid crews. The archivists have given us the locations of other isolated species, if we can reach them before the Confederation. The next week saw the hybrid fleet split into small task forces, each racing to contact another lost civilization. Chen found herself leading a mission to a system at the edge of known space, where the remnants of a species called the Meridians had been hiding for centuries. The Meridians, they discovered, had developed technology that could manipulate gravity itself. Combined with the consciousness integration network, their knowledge could revolutionize space warfare. But more importantly, they were eager to join what was rapidly becoming a movement for galactic reformation. As more species joined their alliance, the consciousness network grew more complex and beautiful. Each new mind brought its own history, its own pain of isolation, and its own dreams of freedom. The human capacity for empathy, combined with Neveran consciousness technology, created a framework for understanding that transcended physical barriers. But time was running out. The Confederation's Grand Fleet was nearly assembled, and their leadership was demanding absolute loyalty from their member worlds. The galaxy was dividing into those who supported the old order and those who dared to dream of something new. In the neural space of the Pathfinder, Chen felt the weight of the coming conflict. They had started this journey to save one species from extinction. Now they were fighting to reshape the very nature of galactic civilization. The question was, could they complete their revolution before the Confederation arrived to end it? A new dawn. The Confederation's Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace like an artificial constellation, over 1,000 ships strong, representing the largest military force ever assembled in known space. Their formation stretched across the star system, a wall of steel and energy designed to crush any resistance to their authority once and for all. But the fleet they faced was unlike anything they could have anticipated. Around the Neveran homeworld, 300 ships waited in perfect formation. Human vessels alongside ancient Meridian cruisers, archivist data ships merged with vessels of a dozen other species that the Confederation had tried to erase. Each ship was integrated into the consciousness network, their crews linked in a symphony of shared purpose. Commander Chen, still merged with the Pathfinder systems, felt the presence of countless minds in the neural space, human, Neveran, and many others, all working in harmony. What had started as a desperate military advantage had evolved into something far more profound, a new form of civilization. Confederation fleet is broadcasting, Admiral Hassan announced through the network. The message that followed was cold and precise. This is Grand Admiral Carr. Your rebellion ends today. Surrender the Neverend criminals and submit to Confederation authority, or be destroyed. The response came not from any one person, but from the entire consciousness network, voiced simultaneously through every ship in the Alliance fleet. We reject your authority. The age of extinction is over. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries to come. The Confederation fleet attacked with overwhelming force, their weapons turning space itself into a storm of energy and destruction. But they found themselves facing an enemy that fought with unprecedented coordination. The Consciousness Network allowed the Alliance fleet to act with perfect synchronization. Meridian gravity technology, guided by human intuition and Neverend precision, turned the void into a weapon. Ships moved in ways that should have been impossible, their crews thinking and acting as one. Pattern Sigma. Chen called through the network, and entire squadrons moved in response. The Pathfinder led a strike force straight into the heart of the Confederation formation, using techniques that merged the fighting styles of a dozen species. Traditional tactical doctrine meant nothing when crews could share centuries of combined combat experience in milliseconds. But the Confederation's numbers were telling. One by one, Alliance ships fell. Each loss felt keenly through the network. Chen watched as brave crews sacrificed themselves to protect their companions, their final thoughts adding to the collective consciousness that bound them all together. Then something unexpected happened. In the midst of the battle, ships within the Confederation fleet began breaking formation. The Consciousness Network had spread further than anyone had realized, reaching the oppressed species within the Confederation itself. As the battle raged, more and more Confederation ships turned against their masters. The network is spreading through their fleet, Dr. Paddle reported, her consciousness bright with excitement. Their own crews are joining us. The tide turned not through military might, but through the power of shared understanding. The Consciousness Network allowed the oppressed species within the Confederation to finally share their experiences, their pain, and their hope for something better. What had begun as a weapon of war had become a tool of revolution. Grand Admiral Xar's flagship, suddenly isolated as its escort ships defected, continued to broadcast threats and demands. But they were drowned out by a rising chorus of voices from across the galaxy. Species long fought lost, civilizations emerging from hiding, all drawn to the promise of a new way of existence. The battle ended not with a decisive military victory, but with a transformation. The Confederation's rigid hierarchy crumbled in the face of something far more powerful, genuine understanding between species. Through the Consciousness Network, ancient enemies found common ground, sharing not just thoughts but experiences, hopes, and dreams. In the aftermath, as the dust of battle settled, Chen stood on the surface of Nevarra once more, her consciousness back in her physical form. The sky above was filled with ships from across the galaxy, their crews working together to rebuild what the Confederation had tried to destroy. "What happens now?" she asked Ven, who stood beside her watching the sunset. The Neverend smiled, his iridescent skin reflecting the dying light. "Now we build something new. The Consciousness Network has shown us that isolation is a choice, not a destiny. Together, we can create a civilization that preserves our differences while celebrating our unity." Admiral Hassan, approaching with Teshvera the Archivist, nodded in agreement. Earth joined this fight to save one species from extinction. We ended up helping to free the galaxy from tyranny. Not bad for a few months' work. The Consciousness Network continued to grow, spanning star systems and species, becoming the foundation for a new form of galactic society. The technology that had saved the Neverends from extinction became the tool that ensured no species would ever face such a fate again. Years later, historians would debate whether humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization was their military prowess, their diplomatic initiative, or their technological adaptation. But those who had been there, who had shared in the consciousness network, knew the truth. It was humanity's fundamental belief that every species deserved to exist, to thrive, and to be free that had changed everything. The age of extinction was over. The age of unity had begun.